Legal disclaimer time. The opinions shared on Priority Air are those of Rob Fair, Chris Voller, and whoever we conned into speaking with us this week. To be clear, they don't necessarily represent those of any organization you may associate with us, but they do represent honest conversation, a bit of humor, and a lot of heart. Enjoy the episode, you guys. Thanks for listening.
All units, please stand by. Rob Ferrer and Chris Voller have priority air. Go ahead, the channel is yours.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm Chris Voller.
And I'm Rob Ferrer, and today we have a very special guest who I've had the privilege of attending some of your talks, as well as I was working in the Lower Mainland when you took over Abbotsford. So super interested in hearing what you have to say. Very happy you're here. And Bobrich, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Rob and Chris, for having me on today. It's great to be able to talk about some of the stuff that affects our people out there. I'm still connected to this world, so I still really am worried and concerned and look out for our members and try to find ways to be looking after them. I am. Let's see. I went and got a law degree in the 70s. In 1980, I joined Vancouver as I was 2 inches under the minimum heights, and my first nickname was the albino dwarf. And so it was a funny world to join, I have to tell you, as a person with that much education into a police force that was not yet that professional. And one of the interesting problems in Vancouver when I got there, and maybe in about 6 years in, I became a union director and was sort of realizing some stuff about the police force I joined. And one of the things was that the senior members were really unwell. They were big men. A lot of them were. They had Dunlap disease, where their stomachs Dunlapped over their belts. They drank, they smoked. And a fellow union director I was with, who was brilliant, did a little informal analysis of how well these members were doing after retirement. And the average member at that age was dying within 7 years. So the retirement age is about 53, and fully half of the members from that group, that demographic, were gone by age 60. And during my time in my first team, I lost both my corporal and one of the senior members to heart attacks. Wow. And so we were physically dealing with an unwell police force, and people weren't working out. And in the years that followed, there was a transition, and people began to. We are hiring people who I called the granola Gore-Tex crowd, guys like you who were physically fit. That was not my skill set, I got to tell you. I thought they were trying to kill me at the police academy, but there was this transformation, a cultural transformation, where cops worked out. They watched what they ate. They tried to be fit, and people were no longer dying in that same way. And so that was how my career kind of started out, watching this thing happen. And interestingly, I ended up in the union, and we negotiated for the first time, when I realized there was a bit of an issue, psychological services for members. For the first time, the department was going to pay for people to go see and get help counseling. And that was my first inkling that we needed to start helping members with something other than their physical health. Anyway, I did 28 years at Vancouver, ended up with a little bit of experience. I was the union president for a couple of years, head of HR for a little while, commander of the downtown east side for a chunk, which was a fascinating part of our city. I actually loved policing in that neck of the woods. I was the deputy chief for 5 years for ops, so running the uniform members of the department and trying to figure out. One of my focuses at that point was, how do you actually make a community safe? How do you actually drive crime down? How do you fulfill our primary mission as police officers to look after a community, look after people, and stop harm? Anyway, after getting my butt severely kicked in a Chiefs competition around 2017, all fair. There's only one spot at the top, and people compete for it, and only one person gets it. So I applied to go to Abbotsford, who were in the middle of a problem. They had a gang problem out there. We in Abbotsford. So I got out there in 2018, and we were the murder capital of Canada in 2018, and we beat that record in 2019. The number of murders we had. And so that was the Bacon Brothers and Red Scorpion days, if you remember those guys. And of course, they evolved into other things like Wolfpack and all that. But the UN gang was also still out there. Anyway, I got out there and was very, very focused on the mission of trying to reduce that violence that the community was suffering with. Fantastic members helped me do that. We came up with all kinds of strategies. We were at one point doing 100 search warrants a year, which is incredible for a small department, kicking in a lot of doors, advertising who the gangsters were, and trying to do a lot of stuff in schools to help people. And around that mission, we seemed to be successful. In 2011, we had no murders in Abbotsford, and it was pretty cool. And so for a little while, I thought I was successful. But my feet were made of clay. And 2015 was an awful, awful year for me as a chief. And so I've watched my leadership in a way fall apart, and my ability to look after people. We had to ask the Vancouver police to investigate a member who we believed was corrupt, and the ripples from throwing that rock into the pond were just brutal. We ended up with 17 members charged with various Police Act offenses after they did a review of our informant handling. I believe most of those charges were not substantiable, but the disagreement with folks about that. One of the people charged was me, because I gave information to the union about two members that were going to need lawyers, and somehow that was seen, at least originally, as something I shouldn't have done. So I felt very weak, because you're now sitting on a Police Act charge, and as a police chief, that's a pretty vulnerable spot to be. And then in May and June of that year, 2015, we had two members take their lives, which just ripped our whole department's hearts, but my heart as well. These were two wonderful members, both sergeants, both people I admired and respected. And I started to look at why I felt like I was flying a plane into the landing strip at 500 miles an hour, full crash mode. And I realized I had 11 members off with PTSD. That's 5% of our workforce. And I said, if 5% of our workforce is off with PTSD, how many more people are limping, with those kind of mental health injuries and are still at work? And so I started to research what was really going on for our people, and realized that my focus on the mission was short-sighted, myopic, that I needed to focus a lot more on member wellness. So I came up with, I come up with these dumb lines and like that, but the two M's, the mission and the members, and a chief needs to focus on both those things to lead a police department properly. I needed to learn how to, what it would take for members to be okay, to be able to go through a career in policing and actually come out the other side healthy. So that became a focus for my last few years. Yeah.
Hey.
And I've had the opportunity, really, I didn't know you from your Abbey days. Minus, I do recall a very special Christmas card that came out at one point.
We should have had a copy of that, man. That's a faux pas. That's a faux pas. That was fantastic Christmas card.
I appreciated it. I'll tell you what, every police officer who saw it appreciated it. Yeah.
Can we?
I had 4 Police Act complaints made against me for that one, but they didn't seem to go very far.
Maybe we should describe the Christmas card just quickly, for people that wouldn't be aware.
It was a brilliant move by my sergeant in community policing. We were trying to. We did stuff like when we kick in a house and it was a UN gang that ran the drug house, we'd put a sign out front that Abbotsford, this kick-in brought to you by the Abbotsford Police. And in the paper, we'd say that was a UN gang drug house. We were trying to be very open and shine a spotlight on these people and not done. And so one of the things we thought would be interesting, and brilliant, was to put me in a Santa Claus suit and then lay on our tack gear on top of that, one of our carbines and the full hard vest and Kevlar helmet. And take a picture of me as Santa Claus with all of that, and ask gangsters if they're naughty or nice. And so and on the inside was a legitimate, although we didn't expect a lot of follow-up on this, request that, hey, if you want out of the gang style, we're all in. We will, and through time, we did things like former gangsters came to us and said they would love some help, and we paid for their gangster tattoos to get covered over, and we tried to encourage them to change their lifestyle. And so we were open to that. But really what we were trying to do, we sent this Christmas card actually specifically to various gangsters and other folks that were fully involved in criminal lifestyle. And obviously we maybe have let the province see it as well, and it kind of ended up on the front page of the paper. Kind of ended up on Der Spiegel in Germany. It kind of ended up on Anderson Cooper and Kelly and Regis, and it kind of went a little viral on us.
It was pretty great, actually. I think, the rank and file members of all police forces saw that and absolutely loved it. And, there's always some fallout. I've had a few Police Act style complaints myself over the years. Like that does happen when you try innovative new things. But that was very well received, and as you said, maybe it even had a positive effect on some of the people you were targeting, right? Like as you said, you've had some who came in and wanted to get out of that lifestyle. So
yeah, and I think it embarrassed some of the other ones too, like mocking them, like
sure.
treating them like they're special, and they're cock of the walk when they walk into a bar and all that stuff that they've got going on. Like that's just bullshit. Our goal was to make Abbotsford a crappy place to be a gangster. That was, and if it took making sure they were kicked out of any gym that they went to, that we went to rental companies and asked them not to rent them cars. Everything we could, we did. At one point, as you know, at Jamie Bacon, we put a police car outside his house, and every time he left the hill, we had a police car follow him. And I took heat for that. People said, well, you're protecting him. I said, no, I'm not. I'm protecting you because they were trying to kill him openly. But it had a very cramping effect on their lifestyle. They had to have their birthday party in their backyard because they couldn't go to a club. So, that was just part of the whole trying to make Abbotsford a crappy place for gangsters. And we took some heat for some of the things. I can tell you my favorite Police Act complaint, and the guy actually had sent me an email and said that what I had done was blasphemy because Santa Claus is it? I don't know who is
Okay.
it. Is he Saint Nicholas? Saint Nicholas.
Yes.
So I'm mocking a Catholic saint,
Okay.
and I said, well, no. If you look at the image, if anybody, Coca-Cola should be suing me for trademark violation because that Santa Claus is their creation. It doesn't look anything. Anyway, he didn't think I was very funny with my response, so that ended up in being forwarded to the police complaint commissioner as a complaint against me for blasphemy. Fortunately, they don't list that as one of the code of conduct offenses in the Police Act, and
Not yet.
yeah, it'll come. All good. The police complaint commissioner actually handled the 4 complaints quite well, and I was able to move on in my career.
Good.
Well, very memorable, still talked about and still admired. So I got to know you from your time after leaving Abbey, when you go back from that 1970s law education and bring it forward. You're back into the courtrooms, you're back into law, and you're practicing.
Yeah, emphasis on the word practice, Chris. So, 40 plus years after law school and articling once, I asked the Law Society if I could be a lawyer again. And they said, sure, all you have to do is article and rewrite the bar exams. So, and I asked Mr. David Butcher, who is an amazing lawyer who has spent much of his career defending criminal allegations against police officers and other work in that sphere, not just exclusively that, but somebody who'd been my counsel when I'd stepped in it a few times. And so I asked him if I could article for him, and he agreed. Kindly. And so I articled for his law firm, and man, oh man, a 10-week bar course, and had to rewrite those exams, 3 hours for each of the barrister. And if it was criminal law, I would have been fine because I'd been exposed to that. But I had to write the real estate portion and the property law and the freaking company law and stuff, and it was all new and all different. And I kind of hated myself for doing this. And I actually made my wife come into the room when they gave out the marks, because you had to pass 6 different things. I said, tell me that I actually passed. Like, look at the screen. Am I actually reading this right? So I passed and spent 4 years working to defend members. A lot of work with the National Police Federation, the union for the RCMP. So a lot of work around code of conduct for members. As you guys know, in both the municipal and federal world, whether you're a Mountie or a Muni, somebody thinks you handle a use of force situation wrong or wants to investigate it, you end up with both a police act or code of conduct thing and a criminal thing running parallel. They take 2 shots, and not always. So lots of times we were working in 2 matters parallel, defending a member.
Mm-hmm.
One of my things, there's a couple of learnings for me around members in all of that. If you don't mind me talking about what I found around members, one is probably half the time, what got the member into trouble was the fact that they were already unwell. So people self-medicate with alcohol and other things when life is, their mental health has just been compromised by shitty stuff at work. And so that's part of the problem sometimes for members who act out in ways that they otherwise wouldn't have. And the second thing that happens is a member can go to a call, and we all know the chaos that can occur at a call. And the member might even act heroically at that call, but it's gone badly. The weapon they believe they saw in a hand wasn't, and all of that stuff in the dark and all of that. And so the member is now placed under investigation. In the province of BC, the Independent Investigation Office comes in and starts an investigation, and it takes forever. And then it goes to Crown Counsel, who has to decide whether or not to lay a charge. And they don't have to do that, but often they send it to Crown to have a look. And Crown goes, okay, well, look at this. And it takes forever. I am amazed, I say a domestic violence allegation is made against a member. In our world, charges are laid by the next day if we investigate a member of the community for that. In the policing world, 2 years is nothing before they end up laying that charge or not, or deciding not to. And so what we've done in those situations is put a piano on a member's chest and ask them to try to breathe for 2 years and keep just going with their life while that is all going on. And so I was horrified with the impact on members when I would say to them, I can't tell you when the IAO is going to finish this. I can't tell you when Crown Counsel is going to make a decision, and sometimes we even thought it was unwise to be bugging Crown Counsel too much around making a decision because we didn't want to push them over the edge if they were, back and forth on what they should do. Anyway, I actually ended up adding it as to one of the reasons that we're breaking members' mental health, that we're breaking them down, and that is long-term toxic stress, where you sit with that piano on your chest for all that time. It continued to make me think that in the Canadian context, police officers need a lot of support to survive a career, especially when things go sideways. And we aren't treating our members fairly. As a society, we're not treating our members fairly in these situations. Members are going to get investigated, and accept that. We need an IAO. I accept that. Crown Counsel has to decide whether your member should be charged. Members aren't allowed to shoot people that don't have weapons in their hands. Like we all get that there is a line that we can't cross, and we want to have a society where police don't have all the power in the world, and people have their rights and are looked after. But we got to do it in a way that looks after that member, because remember, we as a society sent them to that call. We asked them to go to on that hard night where everybody else is just fleeing as quickly as they can and go in and stop what was going on. And sometimes that's going to go sideways, and people aren't going to like what happens. And we need to look after that member. And we're not doing that, because allowing time to slide by is allowing incredible stress to build for that person, and then we expect them to be physically fine at the end. Any research you do on long-term toxic stress shows how it breaks down your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system, your nerve, like it goes on and on. This is not just about people dealing with, having a hard night sleeping. We're talking about people's bodies breaking down because of the stress they're under.
Yeah.
So I continue to advocate for the fact that we're not doing it right.
No,
And
and
so
oh, can I just want to put a quick point on that, just to emphasize that you we have some data that shows the length of time and just that piano and how long that piano on average stays on a member's back. It's a year on average for the investigation, for the IO. It's a year on average for a Crown decision, and it's another year on average if it's going to go to trial. So the average uh, file that goes to trial is 3 years. We have many that are 6 years. So like that is a incredibly long time. And again, we all would support investigations and oversight. Like everybody, I think, in policing or even adjacent to policing supports oversight. That is, that you require that in a functional democracy. You need oversight of police. So nobody
Yeah,
disputes that.
I want to live in a country like that. That's right.
100%. But uh, we also are entrusting these people and requiring these people, men and women, to get out there and do a very, very difficult job. And I think that is where, not just organizationally, a specific organization, but organizationally as in the policing community as a whole, we have to do a much better job. We talk a lot, and we'll get into it, about trauma informed, but we don't do anything like that for the actual members. We train the members in trauma informed approaches to whatever they're dealing with, but I don't see it very frequently that we apply that to all the internal processes that are applied, on top of the member. So that, I see that as a big gap right now.
I do as well. And I guess this for me segues, Bob, you're working on right now something that focuses on prevention, right? With respect to, there's a lot of member related injuries. Policing brings us to certain calls. We get exposure to traumas, but resiliency and ways for us to try and avoid being injured. You're doing some work on that, aren't you?
Yeah, I've had this in my little brain for a while, and I've got a quieter year. I've stepped away from doing criminal defense work and code of conduct work at the moment, and been doing some other projects. But one of the ones that I finally have gotten to is to try to develop a website, and at least the first website I'm calling Leading First Responders, because my view has been that the way we help members is leading them in a different way. What I realized I needed to try to learn how to do after 2015 was a year that I was basically realizing I was failing my members. And so I will put a website. It's just about ready to go live, and I'll keep in touch with you guys and let you know in the next couple of weeks when I've just sort of managed to fix all the bugs and the dumb typos that I've made, and get it out there. And it's actually designed with two things. One, I still think is important, is about teaching young leaders how to complete the mission, how to actually keep a community safe. Key word there is prevention. One that policing has focused a lot on investigation, on response, and I want to continue to encourage police leaders at the front level and up through organizations to focus on prevention. I can talk a lot about that, but that's not the focus today. And the other primer in there is how to keep members well. And so in that, I try to talk about what it is that's actually happening to our members, the fact that about 30% of members across Canada have PTSD already in various levels. The PTSD is on a spectrum, and you have to draw a line somewhere. But psychologists that measure this say about 30% of our members definitely have some degree of the disorder that is affecting their mental health. Other disorders, depression, anxiety disorders, are there as well, and it adds up to more than that. And our members are dealing with trauma, which we can talk about when everybody assumes that's what the problem is. But they're also dealing with organizational stress, which is very significant if you get treated like a number or treated unfairly. Or if you happen to be in a workplace where somebody is a bully or harassing you, or if you have a boss who doesn't give a rat's what about happens to you one way or the other. You're just nothing to them. They're not actually hurting you. They're just whatever.
We say ass. We're not going
Yeah,
for
I was going to
content.
actually
Yeah.
applaud you for avoiding such horrible terms. We are very, our sensibilities here would be.
Yes. So, well, I wouldn't want to offend you guys. I realize that you've had a very cultured upbringing, and
We have, yes.
No blasphemy for you.
Hold
Yeah.
on, I'm going to have some tea here with my pinky up.
And the fourth wolf is that long-term toxic stress that I talked about.
Yep.
That happens to members. You could be a freaking hero going into a horrible situation and having to take a life, and that saves other people, and you are now dealing with the trauma from that, and you're under investigation. And automatically the IAO kicks in, and you're under it. And I've worked trying to help members through this situation where they've had to do just that, and then now they're under investigation, and we're trying to figure out what we say to the IAO and what we say to Crown and all of that, trying to help them navigate a political minefield. Legal minefield maybe is a better word, but there's a minefield for that member to walk through to try to, and they have done nothing but act in a way that is medal worthy, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, I come up with this, and I always try to make things simple, maybe because I am simple. The member has to learn skills, and the best time to learn them is before they're experiencing all this stuff, about how to process and deal with trauma, and the things they should do before, their own resilience plan, that they need to build up their strength and their ability to take a hit. Like put me on a football field right now and let a linebacker take me out, and I would die. But another football player who's trained and is an athlete and built up their strength takes that hit and gets back up into the next play because they've built up their resilience. Well, we can do that with who we are, and that's really important. The second part is how you process the trauma when it happens. The other part is knowing how to deal with it after, and maybe get help if you need it and when you need to get help. The other part of this, the significant other part, is that our organizations, our members, deserve to be in a supportive workplace. They deserve to have bosses who aren't a-holes. They deserve to have people who actually care about them. And they deserve to be looked after. And part of that is creating a culture where when we walk through the door of a cop shop and the door slams behind us and it's been a shitty call, that member can actually take their mental armor off and be looked after by other members. And so trying to create that culture was part of what we were trying to do in Abbotsford. We had, I remember, a horrible event. A guy named Klein stabbed two young high school girls in a school, mentally ill person. We all went to that call. 60 plus of us were at that call. And one of us had got through the door first and was there to do what had to be done kind of thing if needed, and found that the school staff had already acted heroically and neutralized the threat. But a horrible call. And a member going to thank that member afterwards, finding him in patrol to thank him, and just the change in us in the sense that this huddle formed, and we talked briefly, and I was crying, saying thank you to the member. And that's taking your armor off and letting everybody know that you care. I'll tell you one more little piece out of that story that I really, really like, because we're into it by this point. This is 2017. We're 2017, 2 years after those suicides, 2 years, trying to figure out how to do things differently. And we had psychologists coming in the very next day, and people, all they had to do was put their name on 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on a blotter on HR. This is not how you're supposed to do it according to the books. No privacy, no nothing. There's pieces of paper and multiple psychologists coming in, and just write your name in at 10 o'clock and away you go. Because it's going to happen like that. And I hear this noise, and I look up, and I always had my desk arranged so I could see the door. Cop thing. Anyway, standing in the door is this massive sergeant, and he says, "Chief," and I said, "Hi," and he goes, "How are you?" And I said, "I think I'm okay." And he says, "Well, yesterday's call fucked me right up, so I'm going down the hall to talk to those psychologists and see what they can do." And I went, "That's the change, cultural change, where his armor's off." This is what you would assume was one of the toughest guys in the department. In so many ways, he was. In the sense of being willing to confront stuff that needed to be done. But he was going down that hall because he's admitting right off, I might be tough, but I'm a human being, and we need to process this and deal with it. And that cultural change is how a department starts to look after its members, where a sergeant is willing to act that way in front of their members, and it just changes things. That sergeant, later a staff sergeant, absolutely beloved by his squad, right, for how he treats them, how he looks after them.
Yeah, that's great. I wonder if there's a bit of a, so you got to Abbey, and rightly so, murder capital of Canada. Your focus is right now operations, and and I wonder if there's a sort of a parallel here for police officers just generally, right? They don't necessarily think of the other stuff, the taking care of themselves, as the priority one. Priority one is the job. Priority one is all the things I'm going to do. So you get there, and priority one is, we need to change this. We have, we're leading the country in not a very good category. And to take over Saskatoon in that category, who were holding that honor for years and years, was probably challenging. And so you see that. Do you see there a bit of a parallel in the way that that members approach it, and is there a way to get through to them? I do agree there is a cultural change, and certainly from the time you started policing, there'd be a giant cultural change.
Right.
But are you seeing that in your work afterwards, even outside of Abbotsford, dealing with code of conduct, talking to police officers from all different organizations? Do you see that cultural change really taking hold, or are you seeing it more pockets based on the leaders that happen to be around?
One of the things I tried to do towards the end of my time, I had this idea that leadership needed to change its focus around those two principles that we talked about: how to teach members to develop their own plan and ability to handle trauma and difficult calls, and then to create organizations that supported members. Two things, right? And so working with 3 psychologists, we developed 2-day workshops, and we aimed it, and we went to 5 locations around the province, the island up north, and held these workshops for 2 days. And out of those workshops, and maybe these people were going to do it anyway, but I watched a few times the people walk away and change their workplace. But one of the conversations was really significant to me in the other direction, where I walked around. The last thing was, we had these leaders sitting in groups where they worked. Like, say, the people in the area of Kelowna were sitting together, and the people in the Lower Mainland were sitting together. And the question was, what can you go away and do differently than you're doing now? That was kind of like, how can you start? And I walked by a superintendent who said to me, "Well, I can't do anything." And I did my pardon. And he said, "Well, I can't. I'm part of this large organization that won't let me change things. I can't do anything." And that attitude, that sense that they're just stuck in a hierarchy that is what it is, was what I encountered quite a bit. And then other people would not have worded it that way. They wouldn't have said those things to me. But I felt that the amount of change that occurred with those people that we met with in those groups was very limited.
Mm-hmm.
And my focus afterwards was to begin to hold one-day sessions with people at the sergeant level, and to begin to talk to people way closer to the front line, because I felt like maybe that was a lost generation, if you will, of policing, that they weren't really prepared to really step back. And to be fair, I went through a crucible before I got it, before the light went on. I was a limping leader who felt like an utter failure, who wondered if I should just quit, before my light bulb started to go on and I tried to change how I led. And so, to maybe ask that of people who weren't really experiencing that was maybe a bridge too far. Anyway, I feel like we still have a long way to go. I feel like the concept of prevention is not there yet, that we aren't really focused on how we can help people. One of the things that we tried to do in Abbey was develop a wellness plan. Okay, so we're used to strategic plans. Well, where's the one that looks after our members? Because what I would run into, and I won't name departments, but I'd run into a department and go, well, yeah, we've put in place this new program that's going to look after members. And I'm like, this is not about a program. This is an entire mindset about how you run an organization, how a leader functions from day to day. It's sure, the program might be great. It might be one tool in the belt that's going to help a little bit to change things, but this is not about a program. This is not, you can put this in. We've hired a wellness worker and they're going to look after people, so I can leave that now as a leader. That's bullshit. You have to change, like, it's the mission and the members, and the leader has to have both in mind all the time. Mm-hmm. And so the way you lead has to change around that entire concept from everything you do. When you go to a call, if we get to it, if we talk about John Davidson being murdered, we were a different department by that point, and the leaders had in mind, okay, what is it we have to do around this investigation, around this, and what do we have to do about the community, and immediately, what do we have to do for our members? Like what that has to immediately be part of the discussion, right? And so I feel like we're not there. I feel like, so the point of my website, focusing on leaders, because I'm saying leading first responders is the name of the website. I'm still trying to encourage and educate around leading members in a different way, mm-hmm. Than they have, and it won't be like that wellness committee we put together. We said, okay, we're going to do 3 things a year to try to move the needle, and every couple of years we're going to measure and see, because in Abbotsford we paid for a survey to determine how unwell our members were. And in 2017, when we did that, our members had less PTSD than other police departments, and we're doing better, around lots of the various metrics that you can use. But we wanted to do better than that. So every couple of years, the commitment was, we're going to do this again, and we're going to keep on trying things to try to move that needle. But a lot of it is about the attitude of the leaders and the fact that they're trying to look after their members. It's not about the program.
Yep.
So, those leaders who went away and did something in their organizations couldn't do that much. They were limited in what they could do, but their members watched them do what they could, and that changed the story.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Being limited in what you can do is going to be the case no matter if you're the chief or if you're a constable on the road. Absolutely. Everybody has limits to what they can do. Yep. But that is not an excuse not to do what you can do, right? Like the two things, being limited 100%. But, to have, a superintendent or someone say, nothing I can really do, I can't perfect it, I think is that type of attitude. I feel like it is going away, but I agree with you. We're not there yet. We haven't hit whatever that looks like, whatever success looks like. We're not there yet in this realm.
Yeah. I asked one of your senior leaders if I could, they would consider giving me a contract for a year to go around the whole province,
Yep.
and do 1 day workshops with people. And they said, no, the change will just happen organically. We don't need to do that. And people don't need to accept an offer from me like that. I don't
Sure.
misunderstand
No, no.
my but the belief that it was going to change, like what upset me was, I don't think I was upset by the rejection of my idea, except that there was no alternative.
Yeah.
There was no attempt to find a better way to implement the needed change, which we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And one of this comes out of trying to practice law, but the number of times that I bumped into a detachment or a pocket of people within a municipal department that were functioning in an incredibly toxic way was alarming.
Mm-hmm.
The number of times that you had whole squads or detachments that were operating under a toxic leader, quote leader, unquote, remained alarming to me. And so you would end up with code of conduct stuff arising from ridiculous situations that members were being put into. And that bothered me, that we senior leaders need to ferret that stuff out and deal with it decisively. And you can't be complacent around that. When we had, I realized I had 11 people with PTSD who were off, and I asked them to have lunch with me. 10 out of 11 said yes. But not all the lunches were pleasant, because I needed to hear some really hard stuff. And, sometimes the member said, yeah, no, I went to these 2 calls and everybody tried to help me, but it was really awful and I'm still struggling. And so that was, one thing. On the other hand, another woman said, you left me in a toxic environment working under a person who was manipulative and destructive and awful. And that broke me down. And so the calls I went to, at the same time as dealing with that, were just way too much for me. And I don't trust you. I don't trust your organization. I don't trust anything about you. And in my own defense, I had no idea about this person and their view of how they function. That's not really a very good excuse when it came to the fact that a member had been completely broken down by this person. You can give yourself excuses like that if you want, but I don't think that plays. I think we have to figure out how our people are being led and people are helping or hurting them, and deal with it. And so that really, really matters. And so that's that organizational stress I'm talking about. And one of the things I'll say about that is, I talked about those 4 wolves. It's when the wolves attack in a pack that you're in real trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Members who have strong personal lives and supportive things happening in their workplace go to a difficult call and they cry together, and their family supports them, and they go get help if they need it, and their family thinks that's fantastic, and because they're not dealing with too much stigma where they're not willing to admit they need help. And those members get well and stay well and recover and maybe come back stronger than they ever did before. When you're in a workplace where people would mock you because you said it hurt, or you're dealing with a boss who is manipulating you, or has decided you're in the have-not group in that squad and should be shunned and mocked, teased, and you go to that call, the outcome's not the same. You're going to be broken. Because you don't have that strength, you don't have that resilience coming from other people and building you up. And it's already making you question yourself about who you are and what you can handle and whether you should be a cop. Mm-hmm. And so it's the combination of wolves that do most members in. And hence why having resilience already before you get there, and knowing how you're going to process trauma, and being in a workplace where members are like, how are you doing after you go into that SIDS call, Bob? That was awful. And are you okay? Do you need to, what works best for you right now? How can we help you? Those words make all the difference in the world.
So you mentioned when you got to Vancouver, physical health was obviously not at the peak of human performance. So when that change happened, I'm trying to see if there's a parallel here somewhere where there was a change, right? Because that's not the case now. And I'm not saying that every single police officer is Adonis. You know, some of us remain, you know,
We still have fat
short.
generals like our friend to the south commented
Yes,
on.
exactly. You know, we don't need Pete Hegseth coming in and giving us all a speech, but there has been a change, a significant change. So, do you see um, the change that happened physically? Do you see a similar process happening in terms of mental health and resilience, in terms of self ownership of it? Because some of that physical stuff was self ownership, right? It was, I got to get fitter. It wasn't. There weren't a whole lot of organizations that said, you know, like physical testing now in a lot of departments is, you know, nice to have, but not it's not really forced. So a lot of that was individual. Do you see that with mental health stuff? Do you see like a parallel there and the process trajectory?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you know, the change came from the new members. I remember once seeing an inspector in the gym and being utterly shocked. Right, it was one inspector out of 35 in Vancouver actually showed up in the gym when I was a constable. And I went, almost didn't say, but wanted to say, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he was the exception. Now, uh, I'm being overly
Sure.
because I knew there was a superintendent who was a great runner, and there
Yeah.
was, of course, there were fit people up there in those ranks. But as a culture, it wasn't there. It wasn't emphasized. It wasn't thought of as essential. And so the young members coming up created the change. To be fair to the organization, uh, we uh, we hired a fitness coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and they put in a decent gym. And so that person would create plans, and we had an increment program where you got more money if you had certain courses taken and certain years on. And the increment, one of them, included passing the physical test again and encouraging people to do that. And so there were steps taken not to force people, but to encourage people to be fit within the organization.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in Abbotsford, one of the three things we did in our first year was a 100-day fitness challenge, which meant that I allowed some guy with ice tongs to measure my belly fat with me.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me how fat I was.
It reminds me of
I am the
training.
ultimate
Yeah.
non-athlete, and yet even as the ultimate non-athlete, I was in the gym yesterday because I adopted the culture eventually, even as somebody who wasn't ever going to be good at it, right? That was never going to be my gift. I still believe in maintaining as much muscle mass as I can, maintaining my cardio,
Mm-hmm.
like, and because of the culture that my fellow members helped build inside of me around the fact that, okay, you are who you are. You're never going to be some tough guy, but you need to optimize what you've got as best you can. And
Yeah.
so that I see, and I see it happening to some degree with, our problem is this: members do get it to some degree, but it's invisible. The physical stuff's visible.
Yeah.
You're fat. You're fat. When you're fit, you're fit.
Yeah.
You're noticeably fit, right? And so the changes that we're asking for here around resilience and being mentally well are not as easy to see, and so it's a little harder to do. Encourage people to really be doing these things, but I do see it happening. It starts as simply as this: we have to teach recruits how to sleep, because they're all going to work shift work, and their body starts to break down, their mental health starts to break down the more they struggle with that difficult thing of working shift work and trying to get enough sleep. Like that sounds so basic and silly, but in fact, we have to push for sleep hygiene for our members. Um, my son's a sergeant in Vancouver, and I worry because he has the competing demands of young children, a wife who's a professional, so she has demands on her time, and these two young kids who need him to show up even after night shift and get to school. So all of that, I watch the pressures that are on him around something as simple as sleep, yet that affects everything, physical and mental health. So there's a lot of work to be done here still, but I do see it starting.
Chris.
Yeah, and just Bob, you're very humble I've watched you as a keynote speaker in a couple different areas. If you could give some advice right now to these young members who are listening and also our members with service, like what are the first or top three things you would say you should focus on for a healthier you?
It's easy to be humble when you've screwed up as many times as I have. the Like when I try to teach leadership, it's half my stories about things I screwed up. Um, Top three things for a young person. Uh, so this one sounds weird. Self-education. Our world does not require you to take a course for everything you don't know. You don't have to sit around and wait for somebody to put you on a course. If you don't know what PTSD is and what the symptoms are and what causes it, the internet is just sitting there. There are books you can read, like The Body Keeps the Score. So I believe members need to be responsible for themselves and for their own education and understanding of what's going on. That's one. Two, you need a resilience plan that is yours. So what I'm going to do in a gym at my age is different than what you're going to go and do in a gym tomorrow, right? I can't do what you can do. I can't run like you. All of those things. I build a workout plan that fits my whatever it is I've got going on, the injuries that I've got to my body, all of those things. It's tailored to me. Your resilience plan, I can't write one for you. It has to be tailored for you. But it has to include physical exercise. It has to include sleep hygiene. It has to include time away from work. It has to include maintaining healthy relationships with key people in your life who support you. There's components to that, and you need to work that out and actually put effort and time into a resilience plan before you take the hammer over the head. And then you need to learn how to process trauma. So if you do what I was shown to do by people without actually saying the words, which is to take an event and bury it and never think about it and put a lid on inside my body. I call it the canister, where you put events and just shove the lid on top. If you just do that instead of processing your trauma, you will be successful. You will manage to do that. You can do that for about 10 to 15 years. And then you'll go to lift the lid off and put one more in, and the freaking thing is a witch's brew that blows up in your face because you have tried to hold in one part of your head shit that needed to be dealt with, and you didn't deal with it. And so learn how to process trauma. Feel what you feel. One of the things the psychologists always say is, hey, if you after an event need to scream. If you're shaking, don't stop your body from shaking. If you need to work out or run or cry, you have to do it. No, you need to walk away from the call. You need to be excused from the call. I get that you're not going to do that in front of the citizen, but you need to work out your stuff. That's the first step in working out trauma. If it's really awful, is to let your body react and not shut it down. And then you need to give yourself days to recreate the narrative that's actually cohesive about what happened that day, because your brain has blown it into pieces. We process trauma poorly when the shit's really happening. And so teaching members how to walk through trauma that's really bad and put it together at the end. Expect nightmares. You're going to have a shitty week. Like, all of that is part of the deal. And if you're in trouble after a month, or if you need help right away, go get help. When you realize you have appendicitis, generally you don't just take more Tylenol. Apparently you shouldn't take Tylenol for a lot of things. But you're not that stupid. You break your ankle, you're not that stupid. When it's an injury that's past what you can do with a Band-Aid, go and get help. You know who to get help for a broken ankle. You know what to do when you think you've got appendicitis. Get help. Well, if you haven't experienced a trauma that's actually physically changing your brain, physiologically, because of what happened to you, go and get help. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not weird. And those people actually can make all the difference in the world. And the sooner you do, the easier it is for you and them to figure it out.
On your website, Bob, are you going to have some tips and tricks, easy things? I know you know a lot of cops, having been one for most of your life. Before you went to the dark side of law. I'm just, I'm curious if there's going to be like something like that on there, because notoriously, uh, at least maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I'm always looking for easy tips, right? Like straightforward, a couple paragraphs, like how what can I do? I agree fully with the analogy, right? We talked about it in like, and I don't train it, but Muay Thai. I have a friend who's a Muay Thai coach, and he talks about people coming in with virgin shins, and you don't start kicking hard, uh, against a hard object right away, because your shin will break. But someone who's been doing it forever, it's got that resilience built up, and so fully on board. I couldn't agree more on the resilience training before an event happens. But I think some people are going to be like, how do I do that? How do I train myself for that trauma? Is it do I watch more scary movies? What do I do to and again, I'll differentiate the two between the trauma of attending a call and organizational, because organizational is tough to train for. It's a big area that we need to do better at everywhere. Is the organizational stress, which is maybe even harder than the trauma of events. But how would will that, I guess, two questions, will you have some stuff, simple stuff for people like me with simple minds, and are there some very easy things that you think are people should undertake?
Um, I don't have brilliant answers to that. I think those are great suggestions, and I will think about it. Um, I will perhaps, in response to you, add something around. There, you guys, if you've been exposed to ERT people or whatever, they talk about combat breathing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that kind of breathing helps members who are experiencing a traumatic response, a fear of flight response. So there are little tricks you can use when you're in the midst of that to try to lessen your response and to keep your frontal cortex engaged, which is important, and to help you process and to stay at a level. Um, the organizational stress is one of the hardest things to fix. It was the hard thing for me to fix within my organization. And so I do make some comments about dealing with it. One of the things I'll say, and this isn't a short-term thing, so organizational stress does not have a bland, quick answer to it, I'm afraid. The one of the things I'll say, this will sound maybe a little weird to people. I've met people who have never forgiven or been able to move past something the organization has done to them that was unfair, or a person has done to them that was unfair. And so they carry that for the rest of their career as a poison inside them that's just sitting there hurting them. The other person that hurt them is just, a callous human who's wandered off into the distance, or an organization who has a system that is unfair and treats people unfairly and it's not even a thing. It's just a system.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to let their stuff go. They have to find a way to move past the person who's harassed them or something that, and for me, it's actually, I believe in actually forgiving people, because I actually think that sets me free.
Yep.
And so you actually have to process organizational stress that has occurred to you. I also believe in people standing up for themselves and not allowing it to go on and to face into it. Now, brutal. When somebody's actually harassing you and you become a complainant, organizations suck at looking after the person who is a legitimate complainant. And so I totally get people who are reticent to do that. But there are ways of dealing with that by ensuring there's witnesses and other people around and avoiding that person and making and building up a body of evidence so it's not just you against that person when you need to take it on. But do not suffer in silence. That will kill you. And if it means leaving that workplace and going somewhere else or do something, don't suffer. Don't sit there and suffer. Do something when you're under it. And like promotion systems, people, when they don't get promoted, often feel like, well, they've been judged and found wanting, as if they're not a good enough person or something. Well, for example, and I don't mean to be mean to the RCMP, but the RCMP's promotion system sucks because it's not really doing a very good job of ferreting out leaders versus putting people through a series of processes.
Agreed.
I'm hoping this new MPF can maybe do something about that at some point. But it's interesting because as a member of the Vancouver Union, we spent a lot of time pushing on the department to write a better promotion system and working with inspectors when I first did it who didn't care. We basically wrote the promotion plan because we went away and wrote it and presented it and they went, oh, it looks all right. So away we went. Anyway, promotion systems are not an evaluation of you as a person. People actually have to figure this out. They have not been judged and found wanting. They've been part of a scoring system that it's like losing in a baseball game. That doesn't exactly mean you're not a worthwhile human being.
Yep.
So people have to figure out how to process the stress they go through in a promotion plan that doesn't work their way. And we all have to figure out how to deal with organizational stress because it's going to continue to exist. But leaders should address it. When I asked our people what was causing them organizational stress in a formal survey we did, they said, we don't trust your promotion system. So we did two things. We added the union to the promotion plan in the sense that the union sits in the room during the interview process so that they can attest to whether that person was being treated fairly in relation to other candidates. And we asked 7 constables to evaluate whether this person should be a sergeant or not as part of the scoring. So it was members now taking part in determining who their sergeant should be. And the goal was to try to find a fairer way to help members grasp that we were actually honestly trying to promote the right people. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you there was never some biased person out there who treated people unfairly in the process, but I know I was trying to run a promotion plan that actually picked the best people to be sergeant, which is hard to do in a union environment, which I accept. But we tried to make changes that addressed the organizational stresses that the members said they had. And an organization needs to actually try to do that.
That's an interesting perspective, Bob. So that adding the 7 constables provides a sense of ownership, like they're being heard. In your opinion, how important is it for members to have a sense of ownership of their organization? Because you earlier talked about the superintendent who is in a position, I would say, of authority, who feels like they don't have that type of ownership. So how important is it, and how do you instill ownership at the frontline level to provide members with that sort of sense of comfort and contribution?
Yeah, hard to do. So this is stepping out of mental health for a second, but here's an example. I showed up in Abbotsford, we had a gang problem. And a member came to me from the drug squad and said, we could set up computers. We're only dealing with 7 different phone lines right here in Abbotsford right now. The dial-a-dope system of selling drugs in Abbotsford was all dial-a-dope. He said, could we set up computers that phoned those lines incessantly and screwed them up? And I'm like, yep. I went to my IT department and said, within 2 weeks, I want computers dialing these numbers and screwing up these phone lines. I don't know how successful this is going to be, but it was an idea from the very front line about how we could start to mess with people trying to sell drugs in our community. And so what I was looking for was a message for our members that I was going to listen to any idea from the front line about how to combat the problem that we all had, because we were in this together. When it was time to design a gang squad, we called in 30 members who had been dealing with drugs and gangs, whether they were at CFSU or wherever they were. And we sat for 2 hours, and management had an idea what the gang squad would look like, but we asked them what it should look like. And we ended up designing a gang squad that looked much more like what they said. And I'm not sure it was better, but it was what they thought would be the best way to take on gangs. And we did it that way because we needed them to be participants in whatever we were going to do to win this war. We all had to buy into what we were doing. And so super important for bosses not to think they have all the answers and that they're asking their members for input for solving problems and listening to smart, clever members who've got 2 years on the job and have an idea that's sitting way outside the box. That's how you create an organization, in my view, where people buy in. Now, getting them to buy in on things that cause them organizational stress, way harder.
Yeah.
But asking them what's bugging them and then trying to fix it, putting effort into trying to listen to them and respond, I think is part of the answer.
How did you did you do this with thought, or did it just happen? So it's a good point that you involve a bunch of people and you may not create the optimal organizational group out of that, right? Your gang squad may not be optimal, but now you have input and you have people who are engaged and agree with, yeah, like we are part of this team, let's move it forward. So there is a balance there, right? Between you could come up with the best plan in the world, and if people aren't interested or don't feel it was fair or don't feel like they had input, good luck getting them to work as hard as someone who feels like they are. So did you do that thoughtfully, or was it something that sort of organically happened?
Yeah, there's lots of different leadership models out there. There's a guy out there named Captain Abershoff who wrote a book called It's Your Ship.
Yeah.
And his entire point was that you must engage people in solutions and they will buy in. That was his premise for how you built a top-notch warfighting machine. And I think that's right. I think, first of all, even if didn't think it was optimal, what made my opinion more valid than theirs? They had more experience fighting gangs than I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a little bit of humility is required in not thinking that you're so brilliant and there's something wrong with them. So that's part of it. A boss has to apply, I call it meal, right? It has to be manageable. It has to be ethical. It has to be affordable. It has to be legal. But if all of those things are met, and it might work, I want to try members' ideas.
Yeah.
And what I tried to say to them is, we're going to try a whole bunch of things. And if we think this is using up a bunch of resources and it's not working, we're going to abandon it and try something else. Like, this is not, nobody owns one idea and your promotion's based on it. So therefore we're never going to give it up. We will, and this didn't probably inspire much confidence, but I refer to my management style sometimes as flailing, as in, I'll try anything.
Sure.
Like away we go, there are some leaders who go, okay, well, let's ask the criminology department of some famous university if this project will work or not.
See what Rob Gordon thinks. No, I'm kidding.
I have no time for that. We will try, because there's so many variables that universities truly struggle to do that anyway. But and I don't mean we shouldn't look at research, and I do care what criminologies have found worked here and there, and I stole ideas from William Bratton in New York in 1995. Like, I don't, that's all good, but go try, see if it works. If it's not, try something else. And so that was my style around trying to manage the mission, and maybe not different even when I'm trying to look after members. Like, let's try something.
Awesome.
The other thing I'll tell you that's different in our, sort of one of the three things we did in that first year is every member sees a psychologist every year. And they're not all happy about that. And it actually took me a while to get there because the union wasn't happy about it to start with. But enough bad things happened that they changed their view. And when I say everybody, I'm talking about my finance manager, and I'm talking about the person who works the front counter of the police station in a civilian work. Because I remember when John Davidson was murdered, myself and Deputy Mike Sear ran out of the building. obviously we ran out of the building. We, trying to throw on a gun belt and jump in a car and go. And I remember talking to the person working the front counter that day, and she says, "I never want to see you run again." And me running was a traumatic trigger for her. Her husband's a member, like
Sure.
all of that was very, very significant to her. And so what the front counter went through with hundreds of people descending on them with flowers and bouquets, and they actually found that really, really difficult.
Mm.
And so uh, you have members who don't have a badge in their pocket who are typing transcripts of sexual assault, who are being traumatized. They need help. Like we should never assume just because somebody's a cop or not a cop that they're not part of the team and don't need to be supported. So Abbotsford tries to treat everybody in a way that they're part of the team and they need to be looked after.
Chris, do you have any sort of final thoughts, like cognizant of time?
No, I just, really admire you, Bob. I appreciate your perspective. Your humility is a large part of your leadership. I think earlier you said, half of my leadership stories are talking about my own misgivings. And I think that's a huge part of leadership. If we don't learn from things that we've done or could have done better, and we don't pass that on, what are we doing for people? You're very educated. We really appreciate what you've done, not only within the policing world, but after the fact that you've taken your degree, your legal training, and helped members. Like, you continue to help shape the Canadian policing environment. So we're very thankful for that.
Well, one of the reasons I said yes to you two knuckleheads is what are you doing right now? Right? I'm watching what you're doing with your lives, which we're not talking about at this moment, but the fact you're putting this podcast on is the very thing I'm hoping for from leaders from the front line. And that's where the change is going to come from. And it's going to come from you, and it's coming from you. And so I'll say this in closing, if you will. Next week I turn 70. And the question I've always asked myself at various points in life is, what should I do next? And I don't have a perfect answer for when I turn 70. But I think it includes this, because I've watched my father do this, who just passed away at 102. There's a stage in life where you become an encourager, where there's young people, and I'd say young people who aren't almost dead. When where people who are in positions like yours, and I have the ability to say, you guys are right on. You guys, what you're doing, I couldn't be more proud of telling you that what you're doing makes a huge difference. And so I wish to be that probably in the years to come, where I say to people like you, go hard, because what you're doing is so important. So I just want to encourage you to go forward in what you're doing and understand how much it matters and how many things you will affect without ever knowing that you've made a difference. And that actually doesn't matter as long as you are in it for the right reasons. Away you go, right?
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I think there's nothing more that we can say. That was awesome, Bob. You've been an encourager. I think a large part of why we're doing this is people like you who have really paved a pathway into talking about this stuff. So we appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing how the website develops, and we'll certainly put that up to try and drive some stuff over there and just keep helping members. So of all organizations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. You're an inspiration. And for all of our viewers right now, if you go over and check our link here in the notes, we have a hyperlink to Bob's website, able for you to punch in now.
Awesome. Thanks all. See you next time.
All the best.